Hello,
Hello.
hello. Jordy Arthur from Belgium, welcome.
Thank you. Nice studio you have.
Oh, this old thing? Just my parents'
Mhm.
house. Nice
No, but
studio.
like
Nice
good
studio for
recording.
you. You have the atelier behind you. What do I see? Do I see books? I see fabric.
Duh. You see a teeny tiny bit. Like this goes deeper into. Oh wow, yeah, I have it. I have it. This is a little bit. My sewing machine. It's all back there. Like all the stuff. This is like my little office part.
Yeah.
It it's not ideal, but it really works. So those are books and some like paperwork and just fashion books and things that I work with and fabric and more fabric. Ugh, if
And
you're in a workspace,
and why?
trash everywhere.
Because Jordy Arthur is a trained fashion designer.
Ex-
And you studied fashion design in Belgium.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can
Yes.
you call it studying fashion design? You know the history. I mean, I did study fashion design, but I didn't really study like at the Royal Academy or something, you know?
Well, I didn't either. I mean, not all of us are going to go to Harvard, but we can
Yes,
go to other places.
true.
Yeah. So it's been about 3 years since you started to make TikTok videos. It was,
Roughly, I think,
yeah,
yeah.
I think it was right before COVID happened, right before the big COVID wave.
Yeah,
Yes.
true.
And so at this time, fashion is is the tool that you use to express your creativity.
Yeah.
Yes. And so you get to create these, I call them wearable pieces of art. And you share them on
Thank you.
TikTok and, and you share them on Instagram. And it's been 3 years of that. Um, and let's see here. As time has progressed, what I find interesting is you it you've turned it into a business, which is great. But as of now, the brands have come to you
Yeah,
as opposed to you going out after brands, which is fine. But I think it's fabulous when people reach out to you and say, hey,
true. It's a compliment, I feel, when
a
that
hundred
happens.
percent, a hundred
Yeah,
percent from brands that we know of and maybe that we don't always know of,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Now, a common denominator that I see, a thread that I've been seeing, that I do see in your videos and even before videos is your concern for climate change, for eco-friendlier uh, options.
Yeah.
And let's see, we've known each other for
Oof.
7 years at least. At
At
least.
least. At
I
least.
was, I think I was 5.
I was not born yet.
You were not born
Um,
yet, so I knew your mom. Your
yeah.
mom, your mom took care of me. Yeah. Okay. Through the years, you keep on weaving in your perspective of eco-friendlier solutions.
Yeah.
And there was this time where a department store that you worked at allowed you use of their dead stock
Yeah.
and you repurposed it,
Yes.
redesigned it,
Yes.
and it was sold at the store.
True. Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is you get to do what you love, which is fashion design because you do love what you do, right? You do love
Hmm.
fashion. You
I
love to
do.
sew. Yeah.
It's my
And you
life. I mean, yeah. I mean, and I don't know, like if I go back in time and if I think about um, when fashion entered my life, it's from my earliest memories. Not necessarily designing, obviously, but just in wearing and stuff. So yeah, that is my way of communication.
So you're doing now what you love. And then what's interesting is on top of that, you've been able to weave in a personal concern, which is eco-friendlier options for the fashion industry. And you do what you can. Either you repurpose or you try and find other options, right? So
Yeah,
what I see are two things. I see you following your dreams, your passion, and then your contribution to, it's not just you're contributing to yourself, it's to others. Yeah.
yeah,
So from the stance of, I'd say like a life coaching or self-help, you're in a position where it's, I see it as a double blessing.
it is, and it's also like from that life coach or that perspective. I read a book that was called "Finding Your Ikigai." I don't know how to say it in English, but ikigai is Japanese. I think it's Japanese. And it's basically this triangle, or no, it's these circles, and it's
It's
yeah,
geometric. It's
it's
geometric.
something like that. But the thing is this, it's like, okay, so there's one circle that's called what you love to do. Then there's one circle, what the world needs you, or needs, what people need you to do, the world, whatever, society. And then there's one circle where you can make money with.
Ah,
And the place where the three of those circles come
yes.
together, that's
Uh-huh.
called your ikigai. And I read that book, and it basically the book is there to help you find it. But while I was reading it, I was like, oh, but basically I did already found it. I found it.
You
I don't have to
did.
look for it. Because I'm not saying that I'm doing something that the world necessarily needs, but I do think that there are things that I can contribute to the fashion industry if we just keep it there
100%.
to change and maybe disrupt, and I'll grow in it. I'll get better at it as well. I mean, I am still in the beginning, I feel. So there's a lot more room and movement or like growth for that part. It wasn't always easy, but somehow I managed to make money off of it and it's getting better and better, which is great because that means I can sustain myself and grow my business. And then obviously the liking part, we already know. You know, every day I wake up and I think, ha, it never feels like work. It's just life. I
You're
don't know.
just,
Maybe I interrupted your train of thought, but
no,
that's
not
what I
at all.
thought of.
No, no, no. This is fabulous. No, this is great because I actually have never heard of that. The
Yeah,
Ikigai. I'll have to look it up
Ikigai.
afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good
So
book. I think it's also in English. I'm not sure.
you read it in Flemish,
Yeah, in Dutch.
which
Yeah.
I don't.
No, yeah, that would be
I
hard, but
don't.
I'm
Yes.
sure it is translated. No, I think it's an English book that was translated into Dutch.
I'd want to say if it's in Flemish, it'll be in English. But that's
For
just
sure.
me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could be very
Yeah,
wrong.
no, for sure.
Okay. So yeah, you are right in the center of it, right? And
Trying to be there. Yeah.
because you and I, we always talk. Well, actually, we always talk about. We always talk. Period. And then we always talk about everything, all kinds from aliens to like I shouldn't
Pop
have eaten
culture.
that. Pop
Yeah.
culture.
Bowel problems
Yes. And then fashion.
and
Um,
fashion and and deep stuff as well. We go from
like
very
fashion.
low. Yeah, like fashion and like life and the world, all of that. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah,
That's
no, it
really
is.
great.
And I'm blessed to have you in my life.
Same.
So, oh, thank you.
Don't get cheesy.
Oh, okay. So, okay. As this is in okay, since as you know, I am older than you,
Just a few years.
just a few years and two centuries. Um, I remember in the 80s. Okay, so I was born in 1973. I started to get into magazines in the later 80s. And I remember reading about Catherine Hamnet from England and her concern for eco-friendlier options. And then there was maybe around that time, or maybe a little bit after, I'm not sure, I started to see in malls, there was a franchise store. I don't remember the name. Maybe it was called Natural Wonders. I don't know, but that's where you would go to buy crystals. That's where you would go buy to. That's where you would go to buy a tape on the sounds of whales.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
where you would go
Yeah.
to buy a book on recycling, that kind of thing. So I remember buying a book on crystals and then a book on recycling, and it just seemed like a lot of fun aside from it being good for the planet. And so
True.
here's a teenager me thinking, well, this is fun and important. I don't know much. You're in high school and of course, pre-social media. This would have been like by this time 1990, 91. And then I read about some people that were growing organic cotton in the United States and that kind of thing. And it seemed like things were beginning to shift. But I remember in work living in Los Angeles, going to the health food store and then buying organic cotton socks there. Like
Hmm.
I don't remember seeing them anywhere else.
No, no.
Yeah, and so it was very specific and different back then. And then it just seemed like instead of a movement, maybe it seemed it was more like a passing trend, unfortunately. There were those people that remained interested, but just kind of like stayed there on the side. And now here's a new generation that's you, and you all are showing a lot more as a collective, a lot of concern for the planet. I'd
Yeah,
say
and
more
I
than
think
before.
more than before, and I think what you just said about the 80s store that you could buy a recycling book in like a book where you could buy whale in a store where you had those whale sounds and those crystals. That basically summed up, I think, how people back then, and maybe some people still now, looked at it. It was very like, like
Ah,
floozy, and how do you say that?
compartmentalized. It's something, but it's
Yes.
over there. It's it's
Yeah, it's
it's
like,
not
oh, you do
integrated in our
recycling.
lives.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, oh, you like
you're
recycling.
that.
Oh, you're one of those hippies, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
fun, fun. But it's like, it's not, you don't need to do that. It's just like a hobby or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that as scientists and as the situation in the world became more clear and clear that, yeah, that we could no longer continue this way. That,
Whoops.
and yeah, and
Hmm.
I think, I think for a lot of people, it right now has already left that little department of it being a hobby. And now, for a lot of people, I think it's just a necessity. It's something that we need to do, um, because our world is, yeah, going to shits. Um, People can ignore it or can say, like, oh, no, that's not true, or oh, this is a normal occurrence. But right now, I mean, we're recording this on July 27th. Um, if I turn on the news, from Belgium, if I turn on the news, the only news that we get is that the whole Mediterranean area, Italy, Greece, um, Morocco, Spain, but there's forest fires everywhere. And people are going to say, yeah, but there have been forest fires, always. And that's true, but not as much,
But
not as intense, not as long. You know, storms. Yes, there have been storms always. Not as much, not as intense, not as destructive. And it's not that there's new weather things being invented, right? People sometimes
mm,
think that, oh, something new has to happen before we can talk about that there's actually like a problem. No, the things that we have and we know, they will come back, but more intensely. And it sometimes bothers me that people don't want to see it Or what basically bothers me right now
Tell me.
is that people are so surprised when we're talking about the forest fires. They're like, oh my God, like the whole world is on fire. What's going on? And I get it. I mean, when I see the news, it also shocks me. It's not that I'm not shocked, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, but like, didn't everybody say so?
Well, it's easier
Didn't,
to, yeah. Well, because we've been
yeah,
able to get away with a lot for a long time, and it's easier to, you know, or put on horse
but
blinders.
exactly. But there comes a point when you just can't anymore. And I think we're slowly reaching that point. But guess what? It might be a bit too late already,
I mean, even in the
which does
time,
not mean that I'm giving up hope, but
no, no, no. I mean, even in the, what, 7 years that I've known you, we've seen a lot more craziness. And
drastic.
yeah, in 7 years, right? And so I think, okay, the heating of the planet, more areas experiencing drastic weather. I mean,
It's real.
it really is. Um, I was thinking right now as you were speaking, one person that I did not mention earlier was what at the time was known as the higher end brand Martin Margiela, who is Belgian,
Yeah.
correct?
He
Belgian,
lives born in a city next to mine.
maybe closer than we think. For all we know, he could be down the street.
Oh,
Oh,
but
he
he's
is
still he's
kind of.
yeah, he went back. He came back to live there. His whole family lives there. His brother has a is a hairdresser,
Uh huh.
and it's like Margiela hair, right?
Oh, is that how you
For us,
pronounce it?
it's uh, Margiela or Margia, Margiela, Margiela, or Margiela, not Margiela,
Not we were
Margiela.
Margiela. Now that is so he's Flemish.
He's Flemish,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay. So now it's Maison
It's
Margiela,
Maison Margiela, yes.
right? Okay. But he, from the get go, also, you could see him using, well, even making reference to things that looked, maybe there was a, well, that, that feel that became known, that was very Belgian and Japanese, which it was sort of like frayed hems and that kind of thing.
The
Um,
tabby,
yes, but then
very
he
Japanese.
has also repurposed a lot of things through the years, right?
Yeah,
And then this is a very high end designer, just like Catherine Hamnett is. So there is proof out there. And of course, there are designers that are, maybe some of them are not as known, that are using 100% cotton, or doing things that they feel they can. It, they're doing their part, I suppose, right?
they're doing their part.
And then
Yeah,
you're doing your part. However, I think it's important to take into consideration of like, and you know me sometimes better than I know myself. I can sometimes, when I think of something, I go either it's black or it's white. And then you say Francisco, sometimes it's gray.
gray. Yeah,
Because, we think, oh, well, if he's a fashion designer and if he's, interested in the planet, then he should only, that's it from here on, only 100% organic, only 100% recycled. But the pressures and the stress that come with it, you're still investigating what your contributions are as we
yeah.
slowly, as a community, progress.
And I think in general, I mean, I think strong language and strong statements should be maybe used to wake up people who are really asleep, right? We should open
Oh,
people's eyes,
wake
and
up, right?
sometimes, yeah, and sometimes we have to wake them up by just telling them the harsh truth. But a truth, sorry for my TH, I don't know,
Truth.
truth has multiple layers,
Yes.
right? So
Oh,
there's
that's
this
true.
top layer in the truth, but if we go deeper in it, there's like nuances and everything. So we need to get the top to wake people up, and then we need to bring people deeper into it so we can actually work and solve things. Um, it's good to say you shouldn't buy fast fashion. That's a good statement, right? And that's definitely a thing that we shouldn't do. However, if we go deeper and if we go into the nuance, none of us are holy. A lot of us do not have the budget to already buy the 100% sustainable pieces. Um, I can imagine if you're like a family and you're struggling, you have children, you go to the cheapest store and get clothes for the kids, that you're very happy that it's not expensive. So it's not a judgment, right?
Right.
But we need to speak all these things out, and everybody in their own way needs to maximize what they can do. Um,
To
but then
help.
again, to help. Um, but then again, as a person, you're only that big, you're only that impactful, right? Um, so there's also a large part that needs to come from big corporations and
Right.
governments that need to help. But we need to put the pressure there. And it's like this whole it's
Complex
more
web.
it's complex web, but at the same time it's also not complex. We need to do better, period. And we need to do better fast. And if that means for you today as a person that you will only buy 5 pieces of clothing a week because you used to do 20, then you're already doing better,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where we need to go to. And that's for me as a designer. I try to work as much as possible with um, dead stock or recycled or stuff that I find in the thrift store or whatever. Um, but there are moments when I do buy a new fabric or when I have to use something synthetic to reinforce a thought or an idea. Um, is that 100% sustainable? No. However, I only make one. I never put it in production. I really just use it to portray a
Mm.
vision.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this, you know, I try to make this balance
Equilibrium.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one day I would like obviously to produce more and to actually sell stuff. But when I go there, I do want to make sure that my impact is as low to maybe neutral to maybe even emitting more good than goes in. I don't know. Um, but that's a whole thing. That's a whole road that you need to walk down on, and that you cannot do alone. Because if you
Mm.
start a fashion industry today, you can do as much as possible. But there's also technology behind the fabric and technology behind the yarn and the way of coloring. That's stuff that I haven't studied for, that I know that other people are working on. So I'm basically waiting for them. And then, you
Right.
know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
this
It
collective
takes a
thing.
village. It takes a
It
village.
takes a
Right.
village. Um, so yeah, but so that's what I'm saying. We should do as much as possible. But then it's also clear that there are people who don't give a shit, and that there are companies who are really not doing any effort or are even trying to greenwash us. And I
Mm.
think to them as a society, we should be really clear and really make a point.
And now we're taking this dead silence to take a moment and really
Take a
take it in. But
moment.
it's a lot. It is a lot.
It's it is a lot, and that's why I'm just saying, start with yourself. Start with small steps, because if you start talking and thinking, you know, even now discussing this with you, there's so much that comes to mind that
Oh, me too.
I can talk about this for hours and hours,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to zone in on each little part, but then they're all tied together, and then they're all connected to this part and that part. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the first thing is, like, stick to yourself. See what you can do in your house, in your village, in your life, in your way of working, in your art, for me, in to do better and to take the better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's take it up from there, doing a step better every day. And if people say, yeah, but we don't have a lot of time, well, unfortunately, I am young and I do need time. And we had a lot of time. Other people wasted it for us. So, yeah, let's try what we can do. And then we're
Does
going to
it?
have to deal with the consequences anyway.
Oh, that's
Stuff's
true.
going to happen.
Whether it's
Yeah,
today or
it,
tomorrow, in a year or two
it's
months.
already too late. So,
Mm.
yeah.
But when you do your part, you must have a sense of contribution. You must have a sense of fulfillment that at least you're trying. Am I right?
Um,
I mean, it's not like you have to sit down and think about it and think, oh, I'm going to give myself a golden star because I've done so good today. Not like that, but
Not like that.
there's something that's
Wh-
going on, obviously, inside you thinking, I'm doing the right thing.
or it's not necessarily that I think it like that, or it never comes to me like that, but it just feels right. It would
It
feel
feels
wrong.
right.
It feels right. It would feel wrong if tomorrow I would say, you know what? I'm just gonna start a t-shirt company. Gonna. I'm not saying that a t-shirt company is not fun. I would do a t-shirt company, but in a correct way. What I was trying to say is, if let's say I do a t-shirt company tomorrow just to make money, I would buy them from a wholesaler, from the worst factories somewhere in Asia that I know people are not getting the respect that they deserve
Mm,
to make.
mm,
I would say I'm gonna order 10,000 of them. I'm gonna have them printed there, and I'm gonna ship them to Belgium for like 50 cents a piece, or not, maybe
mm,
10 cents a piece even.
mm,
And then I'm even going to negotiate on the phone and tell the owner of the factory it needs to be lower and less money. I don't want to pay that much, blah, blah, blah. Then it comes here. I'm going to do huge sales. I'm going to ship out as much as possible. I'm going to have as much people buy it as possible. The quality is shit, but I don't care. Money, money, money. That, I'm an entrepreneur also. So money wise, that would make sense, right? You're trying to pay as less as possible to make as much as possible. That sounds correct, but I'm not an entrepreneur like that. I'm an entrepreneur that wants to feel, I want to go to sleep and know that I did what I could to be as fair as possible to everybody that I work with and the planet that I step on. And if I do that, I'm at peace with my consciousness. Conscience.
conscious, uh-huh.
Yeah.
I think you're fine. Yeah.
And that's the feeling. So it's not, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm so good. I'm better than everybody
No, of
else.
course not.
No, it's just a feeling that I can go to sleep knowing that I'm not ruining. Well, I'm probably ruining this planet because I'm also still alive and I'm also
Mm.
still buying plastic like a lot of, I'm
Mm-hmm,
still
mm-hmm.
doing my part in,
But but on the other side, you're also doing a
I'm
part
trying
to
to,
assist. Uh-huh.
exactly. None of us, we all have a footprint, this
None of
is,
us are perfect.
none of us are
None of us are
perfect. And
perfect.
I mean,
You know,
I
you
drink
know,
from glass bottles.
hey, we're going to reference that. We're going to make it a special clip to let everybody know that Jordy Arthur drinks from glass bottles, which are recycled immediately.
They are recycled immediately, but then I also know that they're getting washed and they're getting cleaned, and maybe that's also not good. But then I think, okay, but yeah, tap water is better. I also drink tap water. I do.
Okay. I'll make notes and make sure that I highlight that part. You know what I
No, it's true.
saw?
Tap water is better, but
I saw, I'd never heard this before. I saw a Mexican celebrity in an interview say, I don't, regarding pointing fingers, when you point fingers, you're pointing one finger, right? But then you have the thumb kind of going in the same direction. But then you have three fingers pointing
point
back at
fingers.
you. Yes.
Thank you.
I thought,
Thank
wow,
you. And
that's
that's why
deep.
that's deep, and that's why it's what that's why I also find it hard. I know that I'm trying to do my part, but I find it hard to stick feathers up my butt. Is that something that you say?
Feathers up your butt?
Maybe that's a Dutch saying.
Um,
No, that's a
this
French
is
saying.
not that type of podcast. It could be maybe like an offshoot, a spin-off, but that sounds
No,
more like
that's what we
no.
say here. We say, you stick feathers up your own butt like a peacock to show off and say, look what I'm doing. Look how good I am. That's what we say, you know? But that's why I find it hard to do
What?
that. It's really, that's what we say. It sounded good
I
in
need to.
English. That's why I said it.
Well, we're gonna start using it. Okay, go ahead. So
Feathers up your butt.
it sounds like you're sticking feathers up your butt.
But that's why I think it's hard to do that when people tell me, what are you doing well? Because in, automatically when I'm saying, yeah, you can do this better and you can do that better, I have to look at myself and say, yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that I can do better too in my daily life. None of us are holy. I've said it so often, and I'll say it again. Like, I'm trying to do my part, and I know some bits of how we can do things better, but I lack as well. I'm a person. Like, I'm not,
You're perfectly imperfect, like everyone else.
thank you, like everyone else. And I can teach other people something about fashion and about what we can do in the industry, but I'm sure that a lot of people out there can teach me a lot of things about stuff that I
Sure,
don't know.
right.
So,
So like we went back to it. You're right now. You're doing what you love, and you're also
yeah.
doing what you care about, and you're merging the two. And so
Mm.
now you're in that. What did you say it was called in Japanese?
Ikigai.
Ikihai. Okay.
It's probably pronounced totally different, but
well,
I try. I try.
we find out. Yeah, I think this is a great uh, stopping point. I think we could end the conversation now. I know we, like you said, you could talk about this for hours. I know I could
Forever.
go on that journey with you. I would have
I'll
another
come back.
computer out. I would like
Yeah.
be you. I'd let you talk, and I'd be like researching things online, and we would be releasing things live, and call Greta in Sweden. And
Yeah.
okay, so this sounds like a great stopping point. Jordy
Perfect.
Arthur, thank you so much for being a part of this,
Thanks for having me.
and we shall continue on
We
being who
shall
we are and doing what we can to help. All
do
right.
what we can to help.
So then
Peace out.
we will talk later. Thank you, Jordy.
We'll talk later. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.